nostalgia time. Here we go with one of my own original collection of 90s White Dwarfs. So let's get straight to it. Okay, so here we go on another nostalgia drive. This is White Dwarf 194, February 1996. My fourth ever White Dwarf. Last month, you'll remember, we were looking at the Angels of Death Codex, Blood Angels and Dark Angels, and here we have Corbulo and Mephiston, two of those Blood Angels characters, and we'll be looking at some Dark Angels stuff later in the issue. Here we talk about designing a party for Warhammer Quest, a mix of adventurers, which says of course you can have whatever adventurers you like, but here are some suggestions for what roles in a party each of the particular adventurers fills, and how to make sure that you've got a balance so that you can make it through those difficult and challenging Warhammer Quest adventures. Here is a glorious heavy metal. This, it will come as no surprise to learn, is a Michael Perry sculpt. It's a 54mm, so it predates any of the Inquisitor stuff, but it's a glorious figure, and this was painted by Mike McVie. Apparently he said, "Oh, I want to paint that, please." And so he did, and here is a winner of an open competition, and this is so cool. You know, you've got to think back in 1996. I'd never seen the Nick Bibby Dragon Ogre before. The Catacombs of Terror set had just come out, so these were current miniatures. But you know, what's all of this stuff? You might remember last week we were looking at that great spying dragon, which had all the chains coming off it, and this reminds me so much of those 1980s Golden Demon entries with all of the little features on the base. It's kind of muted tones, it's got all these chains hanging off it, gribblies and textures. Absolutely gorgeous work. Big fan of this. Now I attempted something like this on a very mediocre budget. I was going to do a chariot that was a chariot for Nagash, so it would be, you know, suitable to his size, about the same size as this, and it was going to be pulled by many skeleton steeds, and I had the bare bones of it on a shelf in my bedroom for years, but never actually got round to it. But just going through the mail order catalogue and picking stuff for that project and thinking about how it would come together, that was so much fun. I kind of wish I'd stuck with it and got it finished, but I did not. I was distracted by other things, or maybe just intimidated by the project. Here's a discussion of using water slide transfers, which were quite a new thing then, the packs of water slide transfers that Games Workshop were putting out. A discussion of wizards in Warhammer, 4th edition of course, looking at the roles that wizards fulfill within the army. So we've looked at Warhammer Quest adventuring bands, now we're looking at fitting wizards to roles in Warhammer, and the various types of wizards that are better suited for particular roles. Well, there of course is Nagash, Supreme Lord of the Undead, one of the most hated figures in history. I quite like him in a big clownish kind of way. Here we have another article that probably inspired me to go through the mail order catalogue and think I'm going to make one of those, because this is a discussion of Adrian Wood building Abominatus, Despoiler of Worlds, the mighty Chaos Titan here. and just his descriptions of going through the mail order catalogues. And of course Adrian wouldn't have needed to go through the mail order catalogues, he'd have had everything to hand. He'd have just gone down to the casting department and gone, yeah, I have that box, I have that box, I have that box. But seeing his discussion of kind of picking bits from different ranges really inspired me to get those catalogues out and sit down and go through them and order the things that I was allowed to order on my parents' credit cards. Here's some more Q&As. I'm always pleased to see Q&As and FAQs and erratas and things, because it proves that even big companies like this don't absolutely get everything right and totally clear all of the time. These card sections are gone. This is the first, I think, issue of White Dwarf where they started putting card sections in rather than saying go out and buy another copy of White Dwarf and stick it onto card and cut it out, as we heard last month. So these card sections, these were vehicle data sheets for this, for the Basilisk, was what was in there. And those card sections were a big appeal to me, and I was that age. I liked cutting it out, even though I wasn't really playing 40k. I still liked cutting them out and having them. You can feel like more of a gamer. Here's a discussion by Jake Thornton and Gavin Thorpe on scenarios in Warhammer, so not just playing straight pitched battles. Here's some examples of a few scenarios that are not necessarily evenly weighted on either side. It's about bringing narrative back into gaming, all the kind of things that we love and think are important. So I guess it is important to not to think of 4th edition as being sort of the era that brought in tournament gaming and made everything really dull and sort of competitive, but these these scenarios were around, and they were still talking about doing fun battles rather than just straight competitive battles. Rick Priestley talking about basing his models, or not just his models, but those of Dave Andrews, Mark Bedford, Colin Dixon, Paul Muller, Michael Perry and Richard Potter. So if you are fans of their work, you might be able to spot whose what is. Of course, this is the classic on this Necromunda miniature. This is the classic Goblin Green base, but Rick definitely says we use that for photography because the colour preserves quite well. You don't have to. Here are a range of other things. Here are some Necromunda figures based on more Necromunda appropriate bases, some Warhammer Quest bases, some more earthy Warhammer bases. This brown basing here with the 40k figures that later on would become kind of the overall dominant colour, certainly for 40k bases. As Outlanders has just come out, here's a discussion of mutants and zombies and scavies in Necromunda, written in this sort of didactic way. This is Steve Anastasov taking on the role of Papa Steve Anastasov, talking to a young Juve and explaining the ways of the Underhive to him, which was such a cool way of presenting this series. It really kind of captured the young imagination. And with the release of the Necromunda weapon sprues, here we've got a discussion of converting miniatures. Now they've been a little bit selective. A lot of these are the plastic miniatures. If you were playing Necromunda in this era, you will know that despite being absolutely the most exquisite figures ever produced for a game, I'm a big fan of the fineness and the detailing on these Necromunda figures. They were a complete bugger to convert because so many of the weapons went across the body. You had to carve out big bits of them, which is not easy when you're working with a metal figure in your early teens and don't have access to a lot of the kit that I would have access to now to do the work. So yeah, they were not very easily convertible figures, despite their release of the conversion packs. Nevertheless, that continued to be the appeal, the sort of psychological appeal, even if it was not really a reality in many cases. And here are the new House Escher models. I keep thinking I should go back and repaint my House Escher models because they are the most beautiful of sculpts of that era. Again, in my humble opinion, and mine are not painted beautifully, but maybe I should just go back and sort of retouch them. I mentioned last week that I'm not a big fan of stripping stuff and repainting it. I sort of feel like once it's painted it should stay painted unless you really, really can't bear to look at it. But yes, maybe I should just go back and retouch them. Here they've taken a photo of Necromunda scenery that doesn't really, you can see a little bit of the green floor in the background, but they've done quite a good job of disguising that in this case, so it doesn't look too lush and green. Here are the rules for Igor Van Horseman on his big two-headed Chaos Dragon. Tyranids in Epic. Never really paid much attention to these because I wasn't a big Epic, or not at all an Epic player, but not really an Epic fan. And here's that 10 years later tree making article by Owen Branham, which is interesting because I always associate these trees, not these trees, these trees. Oh no, that's okay, because here, this little green bar here, this is Nigel Stillman on trees. So I have always associated these trees in particular, these really beautiful, richly foliaged, like species. You can tell that's a silver birch, you can tell that's an oak, you can tell that's a beech. There's some real thought been put into the structure of the trees here, and I associate that with the work of Nigel Stillman, and the modelling terrain book that Games Workshop produced in this era had a tree article by Nigel Stillman, which is why I associate it with him. But actually the bulk of this article is by Owen Branham. It's just the stuff in this green bar down here that is Nigel Stillman doing it. So these are more basic foam trees, basing up sort of railway modelling trees, but then look at Nigel Stillman's just absolutely beautiful tree creations here. And here we are back with Angels of Death, with the Dark Angels this time versus the Orcs. And weirdly, for a battle report in White Dwarf in which the new codex is one of the players, you would expect the Dark Angels to win this one so that everyone goes out and buys the new Dark Angels codex and characters, but in this one actually the Orcs just pull through, but they are almost completely beasted, and the Dark Angels hold the upper hand most of the way through the game. So it does very much sell the Dark Angels as a force to be reckoned with. It's just the final turn, the Orcs just pip them. Here we have those glorious Escher figures, 2 pages of them this time. So you've got the ones that appeared in the Escher boxed set, and then some other gangers and dupes to go with them, based of course on duplicates of the same bodies. So it's easy to pick them out with the painted ones, but if you go through, there's about 6 or 7 different bodies here, and then the mainly on the legs, and then the decoration and the positioning of the arms makes the difference. That was quite a classic Games Workshop way of sculpting stuff at the time, so that you could have a fast output of new figures, and remains. Not so much with 3D printing stuff, of course, although texture libraries and figure libraries and things make it easier to put out lots of new 3D sculpted stuff. But within sort of metal figure manufacturers, if you're going to be producing a lot of figures, I don't think anyone is producing them as fast as Games Workshop were, which is partly why Games Workshop were holding the market. Excuse me. But if you are going to be producing figures that fast, then yeah, sculpting dollies is what they're called. And these ones would have been quite well finished dollies, and then they'd have had just sort of maybe rendered up to the torso, and then maybe sort of light definition on the torso and spigots for the head and arms to go in so that they could go in different forms. Anyway, and here's that arrangement of weapons that were supplied for Necromunda, which is a cool idea, even if the actions in actuality it wasn't so good. Van Saar, Eager and Van Horseman with its extremely heavy metal dragon. Blood Angels and Dark Angels. Dark Angels, Deathwing. Mega Armoured Knobs. Not actually called knobs in this case. Knobbers? No, knobs in this case, but yeah, Mega Armoured Knobs. Mordian Iron Guard. Elect Commander box set. And here is a beautiful Warhammer scene with dwarves fighting undead. Look at how you've got some very old shields on these guys, and the way that they're painted in a much darker, earthier, dirtier tones suggests that these are rebased, much older models. There's this classic conversion here with the enormous banner. There's an old Marauder Lich hiding in this unit here. Lots of the old shields that I had no idea as a kid looking at this where any of this stuff came from, because I'd seen a few undead things, the newer things, but I wanted these shields for my cavalry. No idea how to get hold of those. And the dwarves, of course, looking resplendent in their dwarfiness with their bright colours and their banners, and two of the best cannons ever produced. I did have one of these. I got it as a birthday present from my sister, I seem to remember, and I can't remember which the crew I got with it. I definitely got the guy standing on the stool with his little matchstick. I think I got the guy with the holding the cannonball, and I think it was this guy with the floppy hat and the lighting stick, but I can't quite remember. Anyway, these guns were in production for quite a while, and I think unsurpassed in terms of fantasy guns of the time, but that's just my nostalgic opinion. So there we go, that is White Dwarf 194. I hope you will join me next week for something different. I don't know what it's going to be yet, but something different. In the meantime, hit that subscribe button and hit notifications to hear when there's another video, and I shall see you again.